Keeping Up with Jones, the Lonnie Jones podcast adventure. I'm your host, Lonnie Jones, and the adventure part is basically just our experiences. And some of those experiences are as mundane as growing up, being married, being a young married couple with a kid, or being a middle-aged couple with grandkids. Some of the experiences will be my adventures as an outdoorsman, a rock climber, a fisherman, a hunter, or my experiences as a police chaplain who's been assigned to a SWAT team for over 30 years. Some of that adventure may even boil down to the idea that there's a belief that I'm a chaotic Jedi. Either way, we'll take the experiences or the adventures and we'll talk about the facts. The facts will lead to concepts, and the concepts lead to application. Basically, it will be anecdotal wisdom. One cautionary word about the facts is we will tell you the facts just as they happened, but sometimes we'll tell you the facts the way we remember them happening, and sometimes we'll tell you the facts the way we've heard other people tell us the way they remember them happening. In any occasion, it's not an attempt to deceive. There'll be a little bit of embellishment, and it's an all good, clean fun and for learning purposes only. Thank you for keeping up with Jones. Introducing the Bible degree with digital ministry. Paul used the marketplace and the synagogue to reach an expanded audience. We have access to the internet and social media. I once heard it said that when McDonald's introduced the drive-through window, they did not change the Big Mac, only how it was delivered. Faulkner University is now offering a new digital ministry track for their Bible degree. Faulkner's degree provides training in understanding and teaching the gospel, alongside training that will allow students to create quality digital content. Opportunities for evangelism in the digital spaces is unlimited, and this is innovative ministry education for our contemporary culture. One of the instructors is a two-time Emmy-winning former ESPN designer. Members of the Church of Christ could be eligible for the full tuition Jack Zorn Scholarship in order to pursue this special area of study. For more information, contact admissions at faulkner.edu. That is admissions at faulkner.edu. Faulkner University is a digital partner with Keeping Up with Jones, the Lonnie Jones podcast adventure. TKM Incorporated in Moss, Tennessee is a construction company that specializes in erosion control, seeding, and soil, hydroseeding, hydromulch, minor excavation, and silt fence. They also provide traffic control and construction signs. Their business is keeping people safe, but their passion, their mission, is they wish that all men could be saved. TKM has adopted the nickname the King's Men because as they serve you, they also serve the King. If they could provide any of their services for you, please contact them at 931-243-3958. That is 931-243-3958. Or you can contact them on the net at tkminc2001 at twlakes.net. That is tkminc2001 at twlakes.net. TKM Incorporated is a sponsor of Keeping Up with Jones, the Lonnie Jones podcast adventure. No, he doesn't. That's my initial response. I hear this a lot, and I almost always mostly respond with that thought. Now, I don't say it out loud, but in my mind, I say, no, he doesn't. He doesn't wear clothes like I wear. He's not in the same shape I'm in. He's thinner than me. He's heavier than me. He dresses nicer than me, but he doesn't look like me. But I don't know how many times and how many different places somebody walks up to me and says, hey, my uncle, cousin, nephew, pawpaw, brother looks like you. Bald men with a white goatee is pretty much the ubiquitous look for middle-aged men. It's as common as mullets on rednecks and rat tails on toddlers who will end up in jail by the time they're 15. It's almost like saying, you look like my brother. He's bipedal and has binocular vision. Just because you have a couple of things in common doesn't make you a look-alike. Speaking of my brother Gerald, when he was single, a lady once told him, "You look like my third husband." And to which he replied, "Oh, really? How many husbands have you had?" And she said, "Two." Okay, I get it. We tend to generalize appearances, and we don't often see ourselves, and in fact, we don't often see others in very great detail. My short stature and stocky proportions often have me thinking of myself, that I look like a badger if I were an animal. But when I actually see pictures or videos of me in motions, the reality is that I'm basically a groundhog. The origin of my bald head and goatee look is pretty simple. There is a picture of me in the SWAT room at our house, aka the blue room. A room in our house that has not been blue in 25 years, but we still call it the blue room because it was so obnoxiously blue when we moved in that it was traumatizing. Over the years, it's been repainted different colors, but it has always contained some things that I have as memorabilia from my time as a police chaplain. It usually contains this big giant quilt that a gentleman sewed all my t-shirts together to celebrate my 30th year as a chaplain. I've got some hand-drawn things, I've got some posters, I've got some awards, and I've got some pictures. I actually have a collection of pictures. Over the years, the guys have given me these prints by an artist named Dick Kramer. Kramer specialized in drawing tactical officers. He's kind of like the guy who paints the paintings for Alabama football, but he only does, SWAT teams and Delta Force and stuff like that. And over the years, the guys have given me 3 of these. One of my favorite ones is a guy rappelling. It's hand drawn and it's hand signed by the artist with a note to me. But in the blue room, in the SWAT room, and what we now call Lathan's room, because Lathan Brinkley was the intern that lived with us in the summer. And so now instead of the blue room, it ends up being Lathan's room. He was our intern from Paragould, Arkansas. But we have this print of a guy, and it's a drawing by Dick Kramer. He's holding an MP5, and it's got the 23rd Psalm for the first responder written in as part of the poster. But in the very bottom left corner of the frame, there used to be a small photo. It was a photo of me and Carrie and Rodney and a few of the OG SR guys. And we were at some kind of birthday party. I don't know if it was at Rodney's house or if it was at Jim's house. I think it was Rodney's new house, and we were standing on the porch. And I'm wearing a gray t-shirt, and it says "Force" on the front of it. And I'm rocking a righteous, full auburn-colored beard. And I had hair in those days. Now, we often have students in our home, and we would have summer Bible studies and devotionals there. And this was years ago. And one of the students from Maysville, they were in our home around the year 2000, Jessie Harless, one of the young ladies that grew up in my youth group at Maysville. She saw this picture, and one Wednesday night in Bible class, just before we started class, she said, "Mr. Lonnie, why don't you grow a beard again? I saw that picture of you at your house. We've never seen you live in a beard." Well, we were headed to the mountains that year for vacation, and when I returned, my beard came with me. I walked into class and said, "Okay, Jessie, this is me with a beard. Tell it bye-bye." To which she replied, "Hey, don't just get rid of it. Shave it in stages. Let us see what you look like in these various stages of facial growth." And so over the next few weeks or days, actually, Sunday to Wednesday, Wednesday to Sunday, I was altering the beard. And once it hit goatee mode, Jackie said, "I really like that look on you. You should keep it." And in the last 25 years, I have not been told otherwise. And so I have a goatee. Now, the bald look was basically a slow transition. I began to wear my hair close so I could wear a hat, a hoodie, a toque, a balaclava, or a mask, and not worry about having hat head if I transitioned from one role into another role. Well, as my hair began to recede, I told Jackie, "Look, there's this little spot of hair that's right in the front. It hasn't kept up with the other parts that are receding. And if it ever gets left behind or if it ever declares independence from the union, I'm going to shave my whole head." And she and Lonnie Beth were gone one weekend at a volleyball thing. I looked in the mirror and saw the gap between the two continents of hair, and I shaved my head, and I've never looked back. So I've been bald and had a goatee for maybe the past 20, 25 years or more. But your uncle, cousin, pawpaw, or favorite dude at church having no hair and rocking a goatee does not make him my doppelganger, my stunt double, my twin, or my look-alike. There are, however, a few notable exceptions. And these individuals do indeed have a striking resemblance to me, or at least I have one to them. Their head is not just bald, but it is similarly shaped, and they are built somewhat like me, if not exactly like me. I've had these guys pointed out to me at different places, and when I see someone like that, my first impression is, wow, that's a handsome-looking man right there. And I don't usually think of men as handsome. Now, just to be clear, I actually look like my dad. He doesn't have facial hair, but the resemblance is undeniable. I've got this picture from Lonnie Beth and Tyler's wedding where I'm walking my mom down the aisle and my dad is behind us. And it is surreal how much we look like each other, even though we're separated by about 27 years of age. I call that picture, "My future is behind me." Now, of the notable exceptions of bald-headed men with goatees who actually look like me, men who don't just have the same hairdo, one of those notable exceptions is a gentleman named Don Purvis. Purvis is the head of safety and security at a particular Christian university. Now, I will not identify the specific university because they, unlike Faulkner University and Heritage Christian University, do not sponsor one of my favorite podcasts. In spite of this, or regardless of this fact, they are still kind enough to invite me to their campus from time to time to speak at events. And in spite of them not sponsoring my podcast, I accept them as much as I can. On one particular occasion, they asked me to speak in chapel. Now, Don Purvis got wind of this, and he wanted to pull a chapel stunt. I am not opposed to stunts in chapel, having made both sanctioned and non-sanctioned appearances in assemblies at my alma mater, who incidentally doesn't sponsor the podcast nor invite me back to campus. But I digress. I've literally dropped into their chapel dressed like Spider-Man, a terrorist known as the Jackal, in a commercial I did for the blood drive where I was dressed like Mr. T. The chapel stunt with Don Purvis was simple. He was going to dress like me, and I was going to dress like him. You must understand, he really does look like me. He would find out that I was speaking at an event, and he would ask, "Hey, what are you wearing?" And he'd show up to this event dressed in similar fashion, and people would talk to him as if he were me. One of the most notable occasions was I had spoken at Evangelism University. I'd spoken at EU in Savannah, Tennessee. And I was standing in the back talking to Don, and we were both wearing dark polos because he'd called and said, "Hey, what are you wearing to EU?" And we were standing side by side. I'm talking shoulder to shoulder, and people were exiting the building and people were leaving the venue, and they were talking. And one guy walked up to him, shook his hand vigorously, and said, "Great job. I really enjoyed your presentation." And I was standing right there beside him. Who am I, chopped liver? I guess they talked to Don and not me because Don was taller. So I show up at this university to speak in their chapel, and I show up early. And he's got one of the university's security polos for me to wear and a pair of his trademark wraparound sunglasses. Now, he's a little taller than me, but I'm a little thicker than him. So when I put his shirt on, it fit like a medium. So I was pretty stocky looking in this shirt. Now, he's wearing dress pants, a dress shirt, tie, and a blue blazer. I walk into the auditorium and sit on the front row. He walks up on the stage and sits in the chairs that are behind the podium, and chapel begins. They make announcements. The MC tells everybody in the audience that the guest speaker that day is going to be me. They sing a few songs. They say a prayer. Don gets up and takes a stand behind the podium. As he starts to speak, Tony Allen, who was also in on the gag, looks up and says, "Hey, that's not Lonnie Jones. That's not Lonnie Jones. Security. We need security in here." And I vault up onto the stage with a willing and cooperative Don Purvis. I apply a wrist lock and throw him off the stage. And then I deliver the chapel address, much to the delight of the assembled students. Even though, and even if it wasn't exactly me, in the right context, in the right costume, and in chapel, no one really noticed that it wasn't really me because Don fit in the situation. And even though I wasn't really Don, no one noticed me. In fact, several people spoke to me beforehand as if I were Don. They were used to seeing Don on the front row in chapel wearing his security shirt and his glasses, and no one seemed to notice. It wasn't Don, but people expected it to be Don, so they saw Don. And it wasn't really Lonnie on stage, but people were expecting Lonnie to be on stage. So when they looked on stage, you know what they saw? They saw Lonnie. I was on the campus, and I was in chapel. I had the security shirt and the glasses on, and they mistook me for the security guard, and the security guard had my clothes on, and they mistook him for me. Maybe it's a stretch, but we get chances to represent, not impersonate, and not imitate, but emulate Jesus in a variety of contexts. We aren't divine. We aren't holy. We can't heal. We don't grant absolution or salvation, but in the right context, we can offer comfort, forgiveness, and teach people about redemption. We are not the real thing. We're a far cry from it. We don't look like Jesus, and I'm not talking about robes and sandals and long hair and beard that people have associated with Anglo-Saxon Jesus, but I'm talking about an authentic representation. We do our best to present love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. We show up and we treat people like Jesus would treat them, with dignity, with compassion, and with value, with love and with genuineness, with unconditional acceptance. We show up, and instead of trying to fool anybody, instead of trying to be actors, and we're not impersonators or imposters, we become ambassadors for Christ. Emulating is different than imitating. And emulating Jesus is not about looks, but it's about attitudes and actions. Imitation is often a surface of copying the actions or style, and it can be superficial. The word Christian, after all, means Christ-like or like Christ. Not look alike, but attempt on a deeper level to think like and thus live like, act like, behave like, interact like, respond like, so that maybe, just maybe, when we show up in the proper context, people will see Christ in us, or they will see Christ instead of us. And this may be just as important. But when people say, hey, my uncle, my brother, my cousin looks like you, it's probably because they like me or fond of me or admire me or think there's something neat or novel about me for whatever reason. And they want that connection. They are trying to see me in their loved ones because they love us both. What if as we tried to be like Christ, and I think it's very important for people to see Christ in us, but what if we begin to see Christ in others? Not that they are like Christ, not that they behave like Christ, but what if we just began to look for Christ in others? The differences in between them and Christ are obvious and glaring, but what if in every context we just simply saw Christ in them? How would we respond if, when we saw the hungry, the hurt, the hurting, the sick, the confined, the lonely, the fearful, the grieving, those in need? What if we simply responded to them as we would if we saw Christ in that context? You see, seeing Christ in others is probably a prerequisite for being like Christ with others in the first place. Jesus himself said, if you did not do it to one of the least of these, you did not do it to me. Jesus would say, if you did it to one of the least of these, you did it to me. And it wasn't because anybody was fooled. There was no mistaken identity. He said, I treat you this way because I was looking for a way to serve Christ and I decided to serve you. It was not a mistake. It was intentional. It was not a mistake. It was on purpose. Because we want to be Christ-like. Because we want to be like Christ. It's not just on purpose. Those kind of actions become our purpose. Using the tool of shortwave radio, World Christian Broadcasting literally covers the world every day with the gospel. They use 2 large curtain antennas. One is located in Anchor Point, Alaska, and the other in Madagascar. They send out messages that are recorded at their international home in Franklin, Tennessee. They make available 40 hours of broadcast every day. The broadcasts are made in English, Chinese, Russian, Spanish, Portuguese, Korean, English for Africa, and Arabic. They would love for your group to visit them. You can bring your ladies group, your youth group, or your men's group. Just give them a call at 615-371-8707, 615-371-8707, or you can go to 3Ws and a dot, worldchristian.org, find the Donate Here button, and make a financial contribution to support this work that literally covers the world every day with the gospel. World Christian Broadcasting, in cooperation with Keeping Up with Jones, the Lonnie Jones podcast adventure.